Hello then, and welcome to my new series called Fantasy Fortunes. Now, for some reason, you know that us at Mongolian Horses FC, we do run a fantasy football competition each year, and for some reason this year, a lot more than last year, I'm getting tons and tons of people in my inbox asking me who they should pick for their fantasy football teams. Now, last year I did do surprisingly well. This year I've started off very, very badly, but enough of you still seem to want my advice. So, tough luck. I'm going to give it to you. In this series, I'm going to be going through all of the fantasy football fixtures, game week by game week, telling you who I think are the people that you really need to be looking at for the next game week ahead, and going through kind of what I think a team of the week might look like come the end of that game week. So we've already had 2 Premier League match days so far in this season, so we've got a little bit to go by now. We can kind of guess who we think are going to be some of the key players going forward. So without further ado, let's have a look at the fixtures. So then, the early kick-off this weekend is on Saturday with Bournemouth at home to Man City. Now, Bournemouth have been very disappointing at the start of this season, not got out of the blocks at all, not scored a single goal. So in terms of them, they have no form to go by, so I'd stay well away from any of their players. Man City as well, they've been a bit slow at the blocks. I thought they were going to be the real quick starters in this league. Be banging in the goals because they look really good pre-season. Beat a few of the big clubs. I know that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, but they definitely have been underperforming, especially when you look at their squad. In terms of players from the Man City then, I think the only players you can really kind of say are definitely going to play and are going to perform well is going to be David Silva, because he's by far been their best player so far this season, and Sergio Aguero, because he doesn't really need to be involved in the game to goal. He's only got 1 so far this season, but it looks like he's going to be the favourite to lead the line instead of Gabriel Jesus. And at the back, obviously, no Kyle Walker this week, so you'd expect Danilo and maybe Leroy Sane to start. But in their midfield, I mean, they've got so many options with Kevin De Bruyne and Yaya Toure, Fernandinho, Raheem Sterling, Silva, or both Silvers. It's literally just far too much talent to choose from, really. So I think the mainstays of that are going to be definitely Aguero and David Silva. Especially David Silva, only at 8 million. Looks like a bit of a bargain. Crystal Palace versus Swansea then. What a fixture. Both teams have been very disappointing. Obviously, first week, Crystal Palace getting smashed by Huddersfield. Swansea, I mean, they've not had the easiest start to things, in fairness, but not scoring goals and not look too likely either. So this game's going to be a bit of a tricky one to call. I wouldn't really like to pick anyone from it. I'll say someone who's going to be most likely for each team. I'd either pick Scott Dann at the back for Crystal Palace. Could be a good clean sheet, and he's always got a goal on him. For Swansea, Tammy Abraham maybe. I mean, he's going to be up there on his own again, like he has been in the first 2 games of the season, but he does look capable and is a very solid young player. So maybe if you want a cheap option up front, maybe stick Tammy Abraham in there, but yeah, that's going to be a risk if you do that. Huddersfield versus Southampton. Obviously, Huddersfield have had a very solid start to the season. 2 wins from 2. Not massively being tested though against Crystal Palace and Newcastle. Southampton are going to be a lot tougher test for them. So I'd say if you want to get a Huddersfield player, I mean, obviously you've got Mooney, had a very good game up front against Crystal Palace in the first game. Mui in the midfield, he's been solid for them, and he was in the Championship last year. So either one of them, and they're not too expensive. But I'd have to say you've got to edge Southampton in this game realistically. Finally scored some goals at home against West Ham at the weekend. Probably be looking to carry on from there. Gabbiadini, he's been a great signing for them. I think he's scored lots of goals, and I think he'll get a lot more this season. So he'd be my kind of sure bet up front for goals in that game. And maybe Dusan Tadic as well. He's got lots of assists in him, got a wicked left foot on him, takes set pieces as well. So for about 6 mil, 6.5 mil, he could be worth a pop. And then the big one then, Newcastle versus West Ham. Now, I'm a West Ham fan, so I might be a bit blinded by faith on this one. But obviously Arnautovic, inexcusable what he did at the weekend, but we played with 10 men. We played brilliantly, I thought, and did amazingly well to get back in that game. So you've got to have Javier Hernandez in there, regardless of who West Ham are playing. It doesn't take much for him to score a goal. All he needs is 1 chance and he'll put it away. He's always in the right place at the right time, and 7 million on Fantasy Premier League. He is such a steal, so I'd get him in your team straight away. The other West Ham player, Michael Antonio, probably. He always puts it all out on the line, gives 110% every single game, and he may not be the most naturally talented player, but he gets a goal, good in the air as well, a lot of pace down the sideline, maybe getting some assists for Chicharito as well. So they'd be the two. Obviously we're missing Lanzini a lot at the minute. When he comes back in, I'd like to think there'll be a few more players that will be performing for us with him in the side. Newcastle, they've not got off the mark at all this season. But if a team's going to get off the mark and start scoring goals, you can guarantee it'll be against West Ham. So maybe have a punt at a cheap striker. Joselu or Dwight Gale could be a good shout for Newcastle. Watford against Brighton then. Watford have really shot out the blocks and they've looked quite good, especially in their midfield with Doucouré and Richarlison. They've been in the points, getting some goals and assists. In terms of up front for Watford, it's been a bit tricky because they've got players coming in and out with Andre Gray, Troy Deeney's coming back from injury. Akaka started the first game but didn't start in the second game, so I'd maybe stay away from their strikers, but definitely those two midfielders are definitely worth a punt. 5.56 million each. Definitely looking like good signings for a few game weeks. Brighton, so they've not got any form to go on, really can't buy a goal at the minute, so in all honesty I'd just stay well away from them for this game week. The late kick-off then on the Saturday is Man United at home to Leicester. Now obviously Man United have been unreal at the start of the season. 8 goals in 2 games, not conceded a goal. So I mean, you could, the endless list of players that you could put in there, but I mean obviously Pogba, Mkhitaryan, Lukaku. I mean, I don't even think Lukaku's played that well, but he's still got 3 goals in 2 games, which is quite worrying for when he does maybe start playing a little bit better. Pogba has just been unreal. Mkhitaryan with the assists, and then you could have Bailly, Phil Jones. At only 5 minutes at the back, Phil Jones looked pretty good. Gets up, gets his head on a lot of stuff going forward. Hit the bar at the weekend. David De Gea in goal. Obviously not conceded yet this season, so I say you can't really go wrong with many of the Man U signings at the minute, and especially Pogba, if you've not got him in yet. 8.1 million or 8.7 million, I don't think it is, in between that, is a steal at the minute, and you've got to get him in your team because he's going to be performing well all season and his price is only going to shoot up massively. As for Leicester, I mean, they scored 3 goals against Arsenal, but Arsenal have a very leaky defence. They'll find it a lot tougher against Man United, but the only time Man United have looked like opening up this season really is with a bit of pacing behind. Swansea did it early in their game, had a little bit of luck, hit the bar early on in that fixture, so someone like Jamie Vardy obviously has the pace to get him behind that Man United defence and maybe cause a bit of trouble for him, but in this game you can't look past Man United at all. On to Sunday then, and you've got Chelsea at home to Everton. Now Chelsea, very poor start against Burnley. They did win a game that maybe they didn't deserve to win against Tottenham at Wembley at the weekend. But if they defend like they defended against Tottenham, then they shouldn't have any problems in this one really. I can't see Everton scoring. Maybe Rooney. He's scored a couple already this season, likes a big game, so if you're going to go for an Everton player, maybe go for him, but other than that I think you can't really look past Chelsea. Chelsea again though, they played so many defenders and defensive midfielders the other day, it's quite tricky to say who's going to play. So Marcus Alonso obviously with 2 goals, but he's so expensive as a defensive option, but I mean that could pay off during the season, so it might be worth getting him in there if you've got a couple of mil to spend. David Luiz as well was playing in a more defensive midfield position rather than at the back of the weekend as well, so if he's playing in there then you never know, he might be able to get himself on the score sheet or get himself an assist or something like that. But in terms of attackers, I mean Morata looked lost at the weekend against Tottenham, maybe struggling to find his way in that style of football, so if they play that same style of football then they'll struggle. In terms of actually attacking players, Willian for them has really been the only one who's looked consistently like performing, so maybe chuck him in there at a kind of £7.5–8 million option. Now West Brom then, the high flyers at the start of the season. 2 games, 2 wins, not conceded either. I mean they don't score goals, but they just don't concede goals either. And normally every single fantasy season I've had Gareth McCauley in, literally for the whole season. He's such a solid fantasy football player, but he's been injured, and then all of a sudden this Hegazi guy, the new sign, has come up and just completely stolen his limelight, so you've got to get him in there straight away because he looks like he's just Gareth McCauley reincarnated. Scores goals, obviously kept 2 clean sheets, so Ben Foster as well in goal, always there kind of backing up the defence, and you'd think he'd probably make a few saves if called upon. Stoke, they've not really set the world on fire. Obviously Jesse Rodriguez coming in, he looked quite lively against Arsenal at the weekend, but you can't see them scoring lots of goals. They've got a lot of new players in that team, but Jesse is only 6 million, so I mean obviously it doesn't make any sense putting in loads of West Brom defenders and then an attacker from Stoke, but Jesse is only 6 million and he is a midfielder as well, so obviously you get that extra point for a goal in midfield, so he might be worth, maybe not this week but in future weeks, thinking about getting him in at some point. And then Liverpool versus Arsenal then. I've been racking my brains about this one, and it's a really tricky match to call because they've both been involved in a 1-0 and quite a tight game. Obviously Arsenal were on the wrong side of one, Liverpool were on the winning side of one, and then they've both been involved in a complete nut goal fest, with Liverpool drawing 3-0 against Watford on the starting day of the season, and Arsenal just pipping Leicester to a 4-3 win on the opening day of the season as well. So, I mean, it's going to be another one of those games where it's either going to be a 1-0 or it's going to end up being another 3 or 4-3. Arsenal defensively look very, very weak, especially with a bit of pace in behind. I mean, Jose Rodriguez really managed to exploit that the other day. So maybe with Mane or Mohamed Salah using that pace to get in behind, they could be real dangerous options, especially Mane. Mane loves a big game. He's a player that I always very consistently have in my team, whoever they're playing. 9.5 million though, he is quite expensive, but again, a big goal scoring midfield option. With Arsenal, I mean, they have been quite disappointing in terms of not having anybody playing consistently well for them, apart from maybe the Ox. He is a midfielder, but he's playing at like a right wing back position, so he has looked quite likely for goals, but obviously you're not going to get the points that you'd get from a defender. You will just get the midfield points, but he's quite cheap. I think 6.5 million, not a lot for the Ox. Other than that, I mean, Ramsey's looked quite good. Came off the bench in the first game. He's about 8 million. But again, they're just so inconsistent. Lacazette, I mean, he started with a real bang at the start of the season, the Community Shield, and in the first game of the season. Struggled a bit more against Stoke. Danny Welbeck probably had the most chances for Arsenal this season, but I don't know what goes through his head when he gets himself in front of goal sometimes, to be honest. So yeah, it's quite difficult to punt on an Arsenal player, but maybe just stick with the solid ones of Lacazette and maybe an Ozil, because let's face it, if people are going to really perform on the day, it's probably going to be those two. And the final game then of game week 3 is Spurs at home to Burnley. Now obviously Spurs playing at Wembley this season. Had a real tough loss against Chelsea the other day, where a game that I felt that they deserved to win. There's obviously a lot being talked about at the minute about Harry Kane having not scored a goal in August, and he's hit the post twice, so he's coming close, but not quite managed to get the goal yet. But I'm saying that's going to finish this weekend. I've had enough of it. I think Harry Kane will definitely be a great shout for this weekend, playing at home against Burnley. Perfect opportunity for them to get some goals, find a bit of form and start playing some football. Now, Harry Kane is very, very expensive, 12.5 million, but that's what you have to pay for the double Golden Boot winner 2 seasons in a row. But if he gets you goals, then it's worth having him in if he finally picks up form and starts banging them in. In terms of other Tottenham players, I mean, Christian Eriksen's been great this season, such a set piece and pass on him, so he's assists all day. Kieran Trippier, I think, is a good shout. He really impressed me last season. Come back from an injury. Played quite well against Chelsea, but just didn't have the backup. He was the only willing runner really from the back, getting down the byline and putting in some delivery, so he could be a good shout. And then Lloris, I mean, let's face it, Chelsea won the game because of a Lloris mistake at the weekend, but he'll be looking to put that behind him, make some good saves, get himself a clean sheet, and I'm sure this is a perfect opportunity for Lloris to do that. So stack your team with Spurs. So let's have a look then at the team to watch that I've created then. Now obviously this isn't just all the best players in the league. That would be far too easy to do game week by game week. These are the players that I think will perform, including some very affordable players that, I mean, you can get in your team, because this is an affordable team. This isn't massively over budget. I think it's about 2-3 million over budget, but obviously you're not going to put all of these players in. So let's have a look through the team then that I've selected. Obviously, like I said, Foster in goal, very, very solid behind that West Brom defence. Hugo Lloris as well. I can't see Spurs not keeping a clean sheet at the weekend. Trippier, again, clean sheet hopefully, but might get himself an assist bombing down that right hand side. Alonso, so we all know what he's capable of, but like I said, that 7 million price mark is very expensive. Phil Jones as well, though, he is a cheaper option and he's been solid. With him it's just injuries, but if he's fit and he's in the team, he's going to be playing well, he's going to be keeping clean sheets. Patrick Van Aanholt, I don't think I mentioned him in the Crystal Palace game, but if you don't want to go for Scott Dan is quite expensive, then you've got a cheaper, more attacking option with Patrick Van Aanholt there. And then Hegazi, who I say has just come from nowhere, only 4.7 million as well in the team of the season so far. Solid player. And yeah, hopefully we'll keep his run of clean sheets going this weekend. And then we move on to the midfield then, which is a bit stacked. We've got Paul Pogba, like I said, you've got to get him in there. He's going to go up at least 0.1 million every single week, realistically, so get him in while you can. Christian Eriksen, like we say, He's 1.4 more expensive than Pogba, and not really understandably so. So Christian Eriksen, a more expensive option, but you would expect him to be the main guy pulling the strings for Tottenham all season. David Silva, again, then, like I said, there's a lot of options in that midfield for Man City, but he's about the only one that I can see playing very consistently. He may not always play 90 minutes, but in terms of assists, maybe not goals, but assists, he'll be full of them and has looked the most likely and best performer for them so far this season. And then Richarlison, the Brazilian midfielder for Watford. I can't say I know a lot about him, but only 6 million the way he's performing. Be foolish not to have him. And then Mane there on the left hand side, just a solid player that I've always had a lot of faith in. Gets in, tries hard, got lots of pace to get in behind back fours, and then doesn't mess about with his finishes, puts his head down and puts his foot through it. And he likes a big game as well, performed very, very well in big games against Tottenham and Chelsea and Man United last season. So hopefully he can have a solid one against Arsenal this week. And then as we move on to the attackers, Harry Kane, very, very expensive, obviously. But if he's going to get you 25, 30 goals a season, he's more than worth it. Aguero as well. With Man City, you've got to expect that at some point they're going to put in a decent performance, and away to Bournemouth is a great chance for them to do that away from the pressure of the home fans. And Aguero, he's looked a lot more likely. He's obviously got the 1 goal this season, looks a lot more likely than Gabriel Jesus up there, so he's going to be a good solid shout. And also, again, he's another player that you can keep in your team all season. You won't be chopping and changing. And then finally, my boy Javier Hernandez, Chicharito. Like I said, maybe blinded a bit by West Ham faith, but at 7 million you can't turn him down. That is so cheap for someone who's just going to be poaching goals all season. And even performances where West Ham aren't playing well, which I mean it's looking like quite a lot of games this season. All it takes is one opportunity. He's right place, right time, and he's going to be poaching in goals all season. So, like I said, that is the team that I'm kind of going for. The players that I could pick this week, all 15 of them. Like I said, listen to me if you want. Don't listen to me. Give me some comments. Let me know who else you would have put in your team. What you think, if I've got any predictions wrong. If you think that there's results that are going to go the other way to what I've said. And like I said, any kind of bargains or any must-haves you think I've missed out, give us a comment down below and let me know how you're enjoying this series. If you want more from me, I'll be doing every single game week for the entire season. So thank you for watching. Hopefully my luck changes a bit in the coming weeks, because in that league I'm doing terribly. If you are in the Mongolian Horses FC Challenge League, obviously one of these shirts could be yours at the end of the season. So let me know how you're getting on in that league as well. And until then, it's on to the next one.